let the sheNEDigans begin. Long live the sheNEDigans.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the new show, Let's Talk sheNEDigans. Basically, the show is going to be based on just kind of more like random things on my life. Topics that I'll want to talk about, whether they have to do with movies, games, media, faith, any random topics. Maybe one day I just want to talk about my favorite board game or something like that. So this is basically the show. Once in a while, I might have friends come over on the show. The show is based on, you know, let's have shenanigans together. And yes, obviously, it's not going to be like crazy hardcore stuff. It's mainly just going to be talking and whatever, and obviously some fun. Basically, let's talk shenanigans. Today's topic, this is actually a topic I've really wanted to talk about for a while. Movies have always been very influential in my life, whether or not, you know, it's just because of the stories that they've told, the morals and stuff that you can learn from some of these stories, or whether or not they're just scary, spooky, huge action-packed, awe-inspiring films. There's a lot to take away from film. A lot of people kind of just like toss it aside as just like some, just something of the entertainment industry, which at times that can be very true. But there are a lot of things that you can learn from movies. There were a lot of things that I actually really applied to my life with these particular movies that I watched. I'm only going to talk about three, because honestly, I think these are the three most influential movies in my life. They're not necessarily the best movies of all time, but their stories and the morals that they had to tell in their stories are basically what inspired me when growing up into adulthood. And it's these lessons that I learned from these movies that I applied to myself as a grown-up now. And they didn't necessarily just inspire lessons, but they also inspired certain life events I really wanted to be a part of. Number one is actually the movie Finding Neverland. Finding Neverland is the story of J.M. Barrie as he befriends this family and he winds up coming up with the story of Peter Pan. The story, as far as I'm concerned, as biopics go, it's not very accurate, if I am correct. But it is a very heartfelt story, and there's a lot of really nice elements to it. Like one of them is, like not losing sense of your imagination, your quirkiness, and although growing up is a very important thing, you should never lose sense of your childlike personality. And a lot of that has to do with a lot of the culture actually I think we've kind of like taken a dip back when it comes to the whole aspect of not growing up. But kind of today, and honestly, depending on what family you grew up in, growing up was definitely a mentality of put away all of your childish things, grow up, become stern, and be a man and all that kind of stuff. And the thing that I kind of learned from Finding Neverland, and this really hardcore applied to me when I was in college, and to an extent in high school, was to not lose sense of your quirky personality, or to lose sense of things that you liked when you were a child and, growing up. Obviously, there are still so many things that I still absolutely love since I was a child, like, obviously, superheroes and comic books, Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, and all that kind of stuff. And it should not matter what people try to say to you or try to assume what kind of person you are. You should always stand firm in your convictions and your beliefs when it comes to who you are as a person. And that was always something that I just found that was very important to me, and something that I've wanted to keep with me for a lot of my life. The second movie well, actually, this is a series of movies that highly inspired me were basically all of the Lord of the Rings movies. Um, it's a little bit hard to talk about, and I'm not really going to go into much in-depth stuff in this video about it, but there were many parts of my childhood that were very, very rough. As I've mentioned before, I do have depression and anxiety issues. It really has impacted me on so many aspects of my life. Even now now that I'm married, it's still, I would argue actually it's even bigger at times, just because there's a lot more riding on me as a husband and now a father. The story of the Lord of the Rings is a very inspirational one. There might be more inspirational stories out there, but the Lord of the Rings has stuck with me far more than any other medium out there, or any other story out there. Only because so many of the trials that these characters go through, the scars that they are embedded with, and the emotional trauma that so many of these characters go through, it's really an awe-inspiring thing to watch. And so many of the lines from those movies were just so incredibly inspiring to me during a lot of the dark times in my life. Two of those moments in particular were when Gandalf is talking to Frodo in Moria. Frodo says, "I wish the ring had never come to me. I wish none of this had ever happened." And that's something that really I have said to myself so many times when I was a child. Even as a teenager, as an adult, in college, even now, there are so many times when that particular line resonates with me, and I'm like, I wish so many of things had never happened to me, and I wish that this curse of basically having to deal with sometimes severe anxiety and depression, just, I wish I never had them. And they are incredibly, they can be rather harmful at times, well, mentally, mainly to me at times. Frodo's line is followed by Gandalf then saying, "So do all who enter such times, but that is not for them to decide. What you need to decide is what to do with the time that is given to you." That is a line that hit me incredibly hard. And it's a line that even at a young age I was able to understand. It's a simple line, but it's something that you really need to really hold on to. Mainly because it's true that so many of us, so many people are enduring so many trials today. They also see injustices happening, and like so many awful things happening. Like I said, not only to other people, but to themselves as well. There's only so much we can do by just sitting and basically wishing none of this had ever happened. What we need to do when it comes to those incredibly hard times, or even times when it's not even really hard, but you just sit down and everything's okay, and then all of a sudden you just fall into this black hole for no random reasons. And what you need to decide is whether or not you're going to sit there and basically just follow through with whatever your depression and anxiety is telling you, or whether or not you're going to pick yourself up, move on forward, and fight for your life. It is an incredibly heartfelt message that has resonated with me for so many years, and it's still one that I apply to myself to this day. The second line that really hits me is Sam's monologue at the end of the Two Towers. Once again, Frodo is just at his wit's end. He can't do it, but then Sam goes into this amazing speech. The world is an incredibly dark and scary place, and it is so full of hatred and so full of people suffering, but that's not what the world is. it may be a lot of that happening, but that is not what planet Earth is. That's not what we as the human race are. There are so many good things in this world, and it is worth fighting for. Whether or not it is a literal evil that you are battling against, such as certain injustices, or whether or not it's the demons inside that you are also trying to battle yourself. There are good things to fight for, and these are things that you really do need to keep in mind when you are in the dark places of your life. It's hard. It's incredibly hard. There are times that I feel like I just give up. And there have been times that I have given up. But then I remember those lines and just so many of the other things from The Lord of the Rings. And to an extent, even the Hobbit movies, yes. And it just hits me, and then I move on from there, I guess. The last movie that heavily inspired me into adulthood, and I'm sorry if I get a little bit emotional during this one, but it was actually the movie Hook. Very similar to Finding Neverland. Obviously, it's that concept of keeping your childlike wonder and your child, and not childishness. There's a difference between being childlike and childish. Obviously, there's a difference between liking something that's childlike and being full of imagination and wonder as an adult compared to obviously being childish. And that's something in today's culture which is definitely misconstrued so many times. But that's not like the main thing of this movie that heavily inspired me. It was actually the scene when Peter is finally remembering who he is. And he's in the treehouse with Tinkerbell, remembering his past, why he ran away, and why he went to Neverland, only to eventually stay back on Earth to get married and everything. And sorry, this is the part that, when Peter remembers his happy thought, it's not lots of childish things or the fact that he wanted to be young and go on adventures and all that. It was greatest adventure of all, which is becoming a father. His happy thought was becoming a daddy. He remembers his happy thought and he says, I remember why I left, I remember why I grew up, I wanted to be a father. And that line, when I saw that movie as a child, I was a very odd child. When I saw that scene, it was that scene that made me want to become a dad. Once again, there are more inspirational movies out there, but it was that scene that just, it resonated with me for most of my life. Like, before I became Catholic, I was originally Baptist. Obviously, the thought of becoming a priest obviously was nowhere near my head, because I wasn't Catholic. Being a father always resonated with me, and even when I did become Catholic, and when that other door, maybe God might want me to be a Catholic priest, Hook always came back to me. And that scene always came back and told me, you want to be a father. You have always wanted to be a father. I've always wanted to go on adventures with my child, help them grow up, teach them what the most important things of life are and all that. Even the childlike parts of being there for them during like the moments of their life when they are incredibly excited about something, or when they find a fandom that they like, or maybe if I introduce them to something and they grow up with me and the things that I like. It's all those little things that made me want to be a dad. I remember the day when Pippin came home. Saida and her mom brought him back, and unfortunately I couldn't be there because I had to go to work that day. I just remembered, coming back home. I was a little bit tired just because of like the last few days of, being in the hospital with Saida and, just being up late and everything and just being overall tired, but also just being so full of emotion and so many other things basically. But I remember coming back home and somebody told me that he was napping in the bedroom, and I went straight into there. Mainly just because, like, I almost couldn't believe it. I was like, holy crap, I'm a dad. This is insane. And there's a baby in my bedroom. But then I remembered, like, just like lying down while he was in the bassinet that was like close by to the bed. He was just a teensy bit fussy. He's not a fussy baby at all. He's practically perfect. He was getting like a little bit fussy, so then I played, basically I found this video on YouTube which just plays all of the, like, the Hobbit themes, like concerning hobbits, and whenever that theme would like come up throughout the movie, so it was just one big giant video of that, nicely intertwined. So I played that so he would, you know, potentially calm down and whatever. And he did, and I remember laying down right next to the bassinet, and you know, I just put my hand out, he grabbed my finger, and I was just crying so hard because I had finally achieved that one goal in my life that I absolutely wanted to achieve, and that was becoming a dad. Becoming a parent it's something that can't be properly described. The best I can say is it's eye-opening, it's awe-inspiring. All the little moments I've had so far with Pippin, the movie Hook led me to that moment. It's one that I have never regretted, and I'm incredibly happy that I have Pippin to be on this great adventure with me. As Peter says, to live would be an awfully big adventure. So this isn't really necessarily a funny episode, but a lot of the sheNEDigans episodes there will be serious topics I'll want to talk about. Yeah, this isn't necessarily funny at all, but it's one that I've wanted to talk about for a while. Just because a lot of people, at least in my opinion, don't take movies very seriously. They look at them as pieces of entertainment, pieces of, like, you just watch a movie, it's fun, and there are really great characters that you can accompany and whatnot, but movies are a lot more than just that. Movies can also be heavily inspiring. They can be influential on your life, the way you think about life, how you even move forward with life. There are a lot of movies which are just pieces of entertainment and that's it. And there's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that at all. There are so many movies that have great stories to tell, great morals to teach, and life lessons that would be incredibly good to apply to yourself. This has been Let's Talk sheNEDigans, and, you know, thank you for sticking around and watching this video. Take care, God bless, and overall, just enjoy life. Take care.